Yo, what's up, guys? My name is Feseb, and I'm going to be going over the Wizard class in this video. So, starting out, I'm going to be talking about Wizard in the current meta. So, as a Wizard, it's not really that strong in the current meta because Rangers can basically do what Wizards can do, but better. However, there is still some utility that you can get from Wizard, and depending how you play it and the gear that you get, you can definitely perform in the upper echelons. So one of the things that you're going to first realize as a wizard is that your biggest counters are going to be rogue and ranger. And right now it's a very ranger heavy meta because they buffed ranger quite a lot. And you'll probably get at the upper end of the MMR system definitely some higher geared rangers that will be 2-tapping you to, like, best case scenario 3-tapping you. So you need to really look out for that. And going over some of the pros and cons of Wizard, you do have certain utility spells that you can use to your advantage. And depending on playstyle, and if you're not just W keying into fights and sort of like just casting spells randomly, and you properly go over and, for example, haste invis somebody in, you can get a lot of utility out of that. So without further ado, let's get into the... First of all, I'll go over the perks that you want to choose, and I'll talk about each of these perks. So a lot of wizards, they'll start off with meditation and then one spell memory. This, personally, I don't like to play it, even at the earlier stages in the game when you don't have enough knowledge to run a full 10 spell kit. But meditate is sort of useless in my opinion. You can go to the merchant, and you can go to Woodsman, and you can literally just buy a campfire. And this is a meditate right here for 20 gold. So that's why I don't really recommend running meditate as a perk, which leaves a few other options. You have Arcane Shield, you have Intense Focus, and then you have another spell memory. So Arcane Shield, I think, depending on playstyle, can be good. What you have to understand is whenever you're running 5 spells, you're very limited into the spells that you can actually choose. So normally this is used for like an Ignite build. And going over what Ignite is, Ignite basically gives you a flame on your weapon that does magical damage, and it does scale with your magic power and your additional magic damages on your gear. The issue with this being is that on Wizard, you're very squishy. So whenever you go in, you really have to commit to killing that person. Otherwise, it could really backfire on you. And in most scenarios, you will get 2 to 3 tap by any melee that you're going to be focusing. Paired with the fact that you need to usually run invis because you want to try and get to the target without them seeing it. They nerfed invis, so you don't have the afterimage anymore, and it's not very effective. So going back to the other perks, Intense Focus is a perk that a lot of people like to use. And I've personally ran it a few times. It's not my favorite because I'm just sort of like a diehard 10 spell fan, and I play mostly in trios, but I know a lot of solo and duo players like to use it. It's really, really good for those high cast time spells, like, for example, Lightning Strike or Chain Lightning or even Fireballs, and it literally is exactly how it sounds. You get to just basically instant cast the next spell that you charge up. So this is a really, really good one to run early on. I personally, if I had to choose, running really, really early on, like straight into the wipe, no gear, where you're just starting from 0, I would definitely go for either Intense Focus or Spell Memory 2. So the thing about Arcane Shield is it's a little off meta. Ignite's not doing that much damage, so not a lot of people really focus on using this. So your main options are between Intense Focus and these two. Now going into perks, we have quite a few perks here, but some of them are absolutely useless and some of them are pretty decent. Now looking through all of them, it looks like some might be better than others, and I'm just going to go really quickly over all of them, and then I'll tell you which ones I would prefer using in a kit. So Arcane Feedback, whenever you deal damage with an arcane spell, gain a stacking bonus granting 1% spellcasting speed and 1% arcane magic damage bonus per stack for 7 seconds. This can stack up to 5 times. This spell, you only actually have one arcane spell, and that's magic missiles. And you're giving up one of the 4 slots that you can use to basically get like a max of 5% extra damage and 5% spellcasting speed, it's really not worth the trade-off. And I'll get into that later, because magic power bonus, it's good, but it's not something that you really want to, you don't want to exceedingly go over around 60 to 70%, because like at that point, you're really just going overkill with it. Arcane Mastery. Gain 5% arcane magic damage bonus and reduce this cast time of arcane spells by 1 second. Now, this is really, really good, and I personally run it in my kind of setup. And I think it's a really, really good perk, just because you're getting basically the same damage that you would be getting from this one, plus all of your arcane spells are reduced to 1 second. So this is basically just a better arcane feedback. And this actually applies to Invis as well. So you can insta-cast your Invis on yourself, which is really, really good. And Invis gives you move speed bonus, and it's just like a free relocation. If you need to get out of a sticky situation, or you got a fighter coming at you and you just need to sort of like get out of his line of sight, or you want to like run away from a ranger, you insta-cast this and you're out, which is what it's really, really good for, in my opinion, in this current meta. Fire Mastery, this is probably one of the best perks on Wizard that you can take. So you gain a 5% magic damage bonus for fire, and that works on both Zap and Fireball. So you're getting a lot of value just out of that on its own. And then the duration of applied burns are increased by 2 seconds. What this means is you're not actually getting more damage, but it's taking that tick that, for example, on Zap, like let's say your tick on Zap is 18 damage, right? And it's dividing that over over 3 seconds. So you're doing the same amount of damage with obviously the 5% fire damage increase, but it's just doing that over a longer period of time. But that's actually good, and I'm going to get to that into a second, because incoming physical healing and incoming magical healing are reduced by 50% for 5 seconds, which is really, really good. That's like borderline OP. You're basically making it so if you have this, let's say I zap somebody or I fireball them and I hit 2 people at the same time, their healing from a cleric or like a warlock, for example, is literally just halved. And that's really, really overpowered. Whenever you're in team fights, for example, you can get so much utility out of that by sort of like focusing the cleric, hitting him, making him anti-heal. So the fact that you can get an anti-heal on a fire spell, because usually whenever you're engaging, you'll start out with like a fireball at long range because you want to try and get a hit on them. It's really, really useful. You get a lot of value out of this. Moving on, we have Ice Shield. So this one, you gain 20 armor rating, and you inflict Frostbite on melee attackers. This, I think it's definitely shifted towards being more meta than at least it was last wipe or last patch, sorry. Because you're basically making it, so you don't care about the armor rating in this case. The armor rating is like sort of an added benefit, but it's more for the fact that if somebody comes up to you in melee range, you can, and I'll get into this later, and I'll talk about gear optimization, but you can see I have 316 move speed. So whenever I frostbite somebody, I'm really guaranteeing that on that first hit, I can get away from them. And in this meta, rogues play Cutthroat, and it's really, really annoying to get hit by a rogue with Cutthroat and not be able to sort of like magic missile instinctively against them. So what you can do is, if you get hit by that first hit, you can actually make space because they're slowed for so long. Sorry, not so long, but they're slowed for so much that you can easily create like a significant gap between you two and sort of regain your ability to cast spells and then fight back however you would want to by maybe slowing them or going in with the magic missiles. Mana Surge. This one is actually, I would have ran this last wipe, but this wipe I would replace it for Ice Shield just because the 10% magic damage bonus isn't super important, considering at higher gear levels, you're going to be, regardless, with all of the additionals and true magic damages that you can stack, you're going to be fine in the damage department. Like, going anywhere above, I would say, like right now on this kit, I have 57% plus 11 extra with my book out, and I'm not running Mana Surge right now. So I think it's definitely like you want to hit that sweet spot of 60 to 70%, but you don't really want to go above that because it's just overkill. You're going to be casting the same amount of spells to kill a person that if it was a little bit lower. So you really want to focus on maybe getting a few HP rolls on your gear, or move speed rolls. So I think Mana Surge is good, but the 10% magic damage bonus is pretty mid. Moving on to Melt, whenever you deal fire damage to a target, they lose 10% of their physical damage reduction for 5 seconds. I mean, this is just a bad perk. You shouldn't really be running this. It's very, very mid just because you're never really going to be dealing physical damage to somebody. And let's hypothetically say you're fireballing somebody that's in melee range of your fighter. You're already making a mistake there because then you're also just going to be hitting your fighter with the splash of the fireball. And this will actually put the debuff on them as well. Going on to Quick Chant. Quick Chant's nice. It depends, but usually whenever you're in like higher tier gear, you have enough knowledge to get a really, really good amount of casting speed. And so it's an okay perk, but there's definitely better ones to prioritize. And it's just the flat 10% casting speed. Reactive Shield. When you take damage, you're going to gain an arcane shield that lasts for 3 seconds. The shield can absorb 10 total damage and will only reactivate after a period of time. So this one, it's not really good. It's basically just like having a blue pot, but you start out with a blue pot. This, I don't know if it actually states it, but it's not even for magic damage. This is just for physical damage, and it's 10 damage. And 10 damage is not going to save your life in a situation like the amount of times where you're very, very close to death. You're either going to survive it on the 3rd hit or you're going to die on the 3rd hit. And this is not going to like change those numbers. Most people are hitting for like 60 to 50, like fighters, barbarians, rogues, whatever. Some more, some less. And even with this kit, which I have high HP, in 2 hits I'm dead, no matter what. So this 10 damage is not going to save my life. Sage, gain 10% knowledge bonus. This, I think, is one of the best perks just because knowledge is such a good stat. And like right now I have 37, but when I put this perk on, you can see I go to 41, and that really brings all my numbers up. So Sage, whenever you're stacking on gear, and I'll get into this in the gear portion of the video, I'll talk about what perks you want to prioritize, but the 10% knowledge bonus is really, really good from this because you're basically just getting another gear piece for free of knowledge. So now let's talk about what perks I would prioritize starting out. Now, because I play 10 spell, this sort of applies to me. I'm going to instantly go for Sage. That's the first perk that I'm probably going to take just because you get so much value out of it, and it's a really, really good perk to start out with. You're getting the ability to cast all the spells you want. You're getting that extra casting speed, because this also gives you spellcasting speed because knowledge directly affects it. So, I'm going from 50 to 70. It's really, really useful. And then moving on, I'll either, depending on what spell wheel I'm running and what the meta is, I'll probably go for the Arcane Mastery perk as my second perk once I get to level 10. This is just because it's really, really nice to be able to instacast Invis and instacast magic missiles as well. You're going to be doing a lot more damage with those magic missiles, and those are going to be like your main boss killers, and doing that damage with them is really, really valuable early on to start your sort of snowball into the wipe. Now, going on from that, I'm going to pick Fire Mastery. That's going to be like the third perk that I choose in this sort of progression, just because the anti-heal and the extra damage on it is really, really good. The anti-heal itself would be worth just for the perk alone, because that really does make or break fights. You're literally, like, let's say a cleric heals for 50, you're making them heal for 25 instead of 50, and you can actually poke people down and properly kill them with that spell. And then lastly, I'm definitely going to go for Ice Shield. Ice Shield right now is really, really good, especially in this Ranger Rogue meta, where if you get caught, you're basically dead. This can actually change that and let you get out alive. So now that we're done with the perks that I run and what I would run, I'm going to go into spells. Now, this may look daunting if you're sort of like first time playing Wizard and you're trying to understand how this works, and I'll just go over these little features. So this is your first skill, which is this one. For me, it's Q and E. So this is your first skill. Then whenever you press Q, you open your spell wheel, and then whenever you press E, you open this one. This down here is your list of priorities. So if I take some gear off, that's not enough. If I take a little bit more, you can see right now I have like grayed out spells. This means I can't actually use them, right? So whenever this happens, it means that you do not have enough knowledge to be able to run these spells. So this is where the priority comes in place, right? The priority is basically what spells you would take first. What is the priority of spells that you would select so that whenever you do have enough knowledge, you would unlock them progressively. Now, the way to basically set up your priority is, okay, let's say I want Ice Bolt to be before Lightning Strike here. So I'll take both of them out, and then I'll put Ice Bolt back in, and I'll put Lightning Strike back in. Now, what it did is it prioritized Haste because that came before it. So then I would just take Haste out, and then I put it back in, and then boom. So now I've changed my priority list, and that's how it's going to look. And yeah, that's it. So moving on, I'm going to talk about why I have my spell wheel set up like this and what you can do to sort of change yours up. If you're running 5 spell, so I'm just going to take this off and pretend like I'm running 5 spell. Usually what people will run is they will run Invis. Haste, it got a nerf, so it's not really worth going into. They will run, depending on their playstyle, Chain, Lightning Strike instead of Chain maybe. I know Magic Missile is basically a must because if you want to clear mobs, you have to have that. And then either Fireball or Zap. Some people will replace Zap for Lightning Strike, and yeah, I mean if I had to run a five wheel spell, that's what I would do, in my opinion. I know maybe some people disagree with me. Maybe you can swap Chain for Lightning Strike, but it's really, really important that you have these sort of like key spells like Fireball, Magic Missile, Zap, and Chain. And I'll actually get into what all of the spells do before talking about 10 spell. But just if you want to run 5 spell, this is what I would run. Now getting into 10 spell, I'll talk about each spell that I run and why I run it. Because I think it's really, really important to understand the usage of certain spells and their importance in sort of like a trio setting. And then I'll also talk about solo, but it's not like solo for me is I can't really talk about it that much because I don't play that much solo. Right. Now this may look daunting, but actually it's really, really simple. I have all my damage spells on the right side here, and then I have all of my utility or like my buff spells on the left, except for Lightning Strike because there's 6 damage and 4 utility. So let's talk about the spells I'm not using currently. First, I'll get into Explosion. Now, Explosion was really, really good when it first came out, but then it kind of got double nerfed. It was bugged at the beginning, and so if clerics had Holy Aura, their hitbox was bigger, and you could basically spam this, and then a cleric would die just being in like a 6-meter vicinity, and so it was really, really overpowered. And apart from that, it got the damage nerf. So now it's basically like a slightly higher damage Zap, but it's going to be a tier 5 spell, so you're going to have 5 cost on it. And I don't know, I think the casting time is a lot higher on this as well. So in my opinion, Zap is just more worth it than Explosion. It's basically a better Explosion. Ignite, I don't run this just because it's like a melee spell. Some people run it early on to be able to clear mobs, but honestly, if you're at that point, like, you should just learn the mob patterns and just do it with your staff. It's really not that good of a spell, especially right now because it doesn't have any sort of like scaling, and it's very, very low damage. And now I'll start out with the damage spells. So Fireball, in my opinion, is a must-have. It's, you know, you can open doors with it. You can anti-heal with it. You can sort of like lob them from a distance, and they're scary. Like, people sending fireballs are a pretty big projectile, so you know, people, you can bounce them around, reposition them, kind of mess with them. So it's a good like just AoE damage spell. Chain Lightning, this is going to like electrocute a target, and basically what you can do is you can chain on one person, and then the chain will hop from person to person to person. And this also can transfer from PvE bodies and not PvP bodies. And what that means is it transfers from like a dead mob on the floor, but not a dead player. So watch out for that. A lot of people try and chain dead players, but you can't actually. You have to do it on like a mob or something like that. And also dead skelly bats and dead spiders have weird hitboxes, so sometimes it doesn't actually hit them. And so just generally don't try and chain off of those unless they're still alive. Moving on, Ice Bolt, you're going to deal 30 magic damage and reduce the target's move speed by 20% and action speed by 20% for 1 second. This spell is really, really good. There are a few things that you need to know about it. So this is one spell out of 3 that has sour spots and sweet spots. So if you hit a headshot with this, you're going to get the headshot multiplier. I didn't mention it, but also Fireball is the same. So if I direct hit with Fireball, it's big damage. But if I hit a headshot with it, it applies all of the multipliers to it as well. And that's the same with Ice Bolt. So whenever you're hitting a headshot with this, you can literally hit like 100 damage with all of your damage added on plus the headshot multiplier. So it can do really a lot of damage. And it's your sort of like long range sniping spell. This spell is really, really good for targeting people across the room, trying to sort of like trade with a ranger. Whatever you need to do, whenever it's at a longer distance, you want to try and use Ice Bolt because it's a faster projectile, it's smaller, and it has a little bit of a weird hitbox, so just watch out for that. Moving on to magic missiles, you're going to fire 9 magic missiles that home onto targets. The homing is a little weird. It's a little funky sometimes, and you need to be still to cast it. This is going to be your main PvE clear, and it has headshot multipliers, so make sure you're trying to always aim for the head when using it. And yeah, I mean, it's just basically like your sort of clearing spell, and also can be used if somebody tries coming into melee distance of you. You can sort of fend them off by spamming a few missiles and doing a lot of damage to them. Moving on to Zap. Zap is a spell that deals 20 magic damage and burns the target for 1 second. If you have Fire Mastery, that turns into 3 seconds, and it applies anti-heal as well. So this is also like a good sort of trading spell. If you're against a wizard, you can kind of like peek them, zap them. You don't really want to be fireballing at close range. Zap has an 8-meter range, and it's a hit scan. So this is like a really just good sort of like weaving and fast cast damage spell. Finally, talking about Lightning Strike, this got nerfed. It's still good because it still has really good damage, but they really did nerf the range of it, and so it's harder to hit now. But when you do hit it, you're dealing a lot of damage, and it's the only spell right now that like properly damages through shields. And so you're going to be doing a lot of damage to people with shields that can block all of your other spells, and it's really, really useful. So what you're going to do is you're basically just going to cast a Lightning Strike on the floor, and it deals 30 base magic damage, and it also reduces movement speed the same as Ice Bolt for 1 second by 20%. So that's something not a lot of people look into, but it's really, really useful because if somebody's chasing you, you can kind of Lightning Strike right in front of yourself, hit them, they're slowed, and you can make space. Now getting into Haste and then also Invis, Haste got a pretty decent nerf. You're going to get 5% move speed, 10% action speed, and 10% spell casting speed for 8 seconds. This spell is really good if you're about to like start a boss or you're about to engage in a fight. You can kind of just haste yourself, and it's really good for the casting speed and the move speed, but it's not as good as it used to be. So yeah, that's just kind of like an opener. You just cast that on yourself because all other spells that you cast are going to get that 10% buff, and you're going to be faster at casting with it on. Invis is going to grant you invisibility, and you're going to get 5% move speed from this as well. And on top of that, you are also going to leave after images. So the after images really do kind of screw up with this spell. So you need to make sure like you make your movement pattern very erratic. Don't, go in a straight line where they can predict you. Otherwise, you will get shot at, and people will take those shots, and you can die. It's really scary. So Invis definitely got a nerf, and you need to watch out for that. Light Orb is really, really good. Apart from the fact that you can kind of just like light dark areas if you need to, or like let's say you're fighting a mob and you can't see in the room and you just need some light. It's kind of like it might seem like a meme, but it's really, really good. And apart from that, it uninvises stealth rogues. Now, something that people might not know is that it doesn't actually work on invisibility potions or wizard invisibility. So this spell does not work on potions and casted invisibility, but it does work on the rogue's perk. So it's really good for finding rogues and making sure you don't get jumped. If you see the room is cleared, you kind of just cast that in and clear the corners, make sure that nobody's there. Moving on to Slow. If somebody's running at you, this is a really, really good target. Or if somebody's running away, you slow the target by 40% for 2.5 seconds. And that's just really, really good. If you need to, like, let's say you're out of spells, okay? And all you have is Lightning Strike and Slow, because Lightning Strike is kind of a niche spell that you can cast through people. And let's just say you've been kind of like fighting at range and you've used all these spells. You can just hit them with a Slow, then hit them with a Lightning Strike, and they're slowed by like 60%, and they really, really struggle to get away. Now, as the last final thing I'll go over in this video, I'll talk a little bit about perks. Now, the priority of perks that I choose whenever it comes to gear is movement speed, is basically whenever it is applicable is the first perk that I want on my gear. As you can see here, I have movement speed bonus, and on my legs, I have movement speed bonus, and that's how I can really get to that higher movement speed. And it's really, really nice for kiting or running away from rogues or fighters, and you can just easily kite. Even with your book out, I'm at positive movement speed because your book only gives you -6. So movement speed is a must. When it comes to the gear that can roll it, you always want the additional or true magic damage rolls, and obviously it's better if they can roll a 2 additional or a 2 true. Now you can see here I have both movement speed and magic damage, and same here, I have movement speed and magic damage, so obviously I'm getting a lot of movement speed out of this kit. Starting with the hat, I always prioritize the additional or true magic damage, then I'll go for knowledge as the next priority, and then after that, will or magic power, and then after will or magic power, I will try and go for max HP, vigor, and then lastly, magic power percentage, because the actual percentage that you get from magic power bonus isn't really as much as you get from magic power. When it comes to the cape, the golden cloak is the best cape that you can get because 3-all is just such a huge stat boost. This cape is obviously like almost BIS because I have move speed on it, I have additional magic damage, I have magic damage bonus, and if the last one was, for example, another movement speed or magic power, it would be better obviously, but unfortunately I didn't roll that on this, and it's still really, really good. Even a cape with 3-all and 2 additional magic damage is still extremely good. Moving on to the chestplate, I like to wear Oracle Robe or Adventure Tunic. It depends. Same with hat. I mean, hat, you can wear the wizard hat or the leather cap. You're very, very limited when it comes to that. But in my opinion, the wizard hat's just better because you have less move speed, you can roll the vigor on it base, and you get the magic power, which is pretty nice. So I go for Oracle Robe, Adventure Tunic, or the Golden Robe, obviously. But, you know, if you don't have that, then that's kind of trivial. So I'll always try and roll knowledge, magic power, max HP or vigor, and then magic power percentage if I have to. But this one is 3 knowledge, 4 magic power, max health bonus. Perfect. Don't need anything else. As for the gloves, reinforced gloves are the only gloves that you should be using. That's just because they give you vigor, and that's kind of like translated. You don't really need to force like a base stat on anything, but because they're vigor, there's no other better option than vigor. Considering the only other ones are split stats between like resourcefulness and knowledge, and vigor is just a really nice stat to have. And you can roll knowledge on this, magic power. Kind of, you'll see a reoccurring theme of knowledge and magic power on all my gear. Going on to the leggings, this is base knowledge, so I roll for vigor, additional move speed. Unfortunately, on this one, I didn't really get will or magic power, but that's totally fine because I kind of compensate by having high will and also by having a lot of magic power rolls. Now, these boots might seem like agility is not really a good stat, but even so, I mean, I'm getting 0.5% move speed bonus, I have 2 knowledge on them, and I have 2 agi, and that 2 agi is giving me those 2 extra movement speed points, so in my opinion, it's worth it. And the only boots that I'll go for are Lightfoot boots, because they're the highest move speed, and that's, I mean, other than that, you're really only getting armor rating as a bonus, so it's not really that needed in my opinion. The move speed is worth wearing them alone. And as for leggings, I go for the leather chausses. They're, in my opinion, the better version, but if you do get like bis agility leggings, the loose trousers, then those are better. Just because they weigh less, they are going to be a lot faster. So you can get to like 320 something move speed if you wear those. As for the necklace, I usually only go for the Phoenix Choker or the Necklace of Peace, just because the max HP that you get from a necklace apiece, let's see if I have one right here, 11 max health. That's insane. Like if I wear this, my HP goes from 112 to 118, and it's a pretty decent boost. So you're getting 6 extra HP on that, and I have a 5 max HP roll on this. So keep in mind, like, you're definitely getting your bang for your buck on necklace apiece, but the Phoenix Choker is really, really good because instead of just having the 2 that you can roll here, the 2 that you can roll here, the 2 that you can roll here, and the 2 that you can roll here, and usually the 3 that you can roll here, additional or true magic damages, this one actually goes over that cap, so you can get even more damage. Now, on a necklace, I would try and get 1 all, if you can, any movement speed rolls, magic power, max health, and whatever other magic penetration or max HP rolls that you can get. Going on a book, the best rolls that you can get on a book are going to be magic power, magic damage bonus, and then max HP. Or magic penetration if you want that. Magic penetration is not that good. Like max HP will probably just be better for you. So in this case, I have 4 max health, 6 magic power, and then magic damage bonus. Your secondary weapon, you can use crossbow, quarterstaff, crystal sword, or staff. But I will probably always just use the crystal sword because it's really good for clearing. You get your 6 magic power, your 3 weapon damage, and then obviously like weapon damage, any weapon benefits from having it. My magic power. Here you can also go for like physic damage bonus in certain scenarios, just because as it's a melee weapon, it does benefit from either magic or physical, considering its split stat. Something to pay attention to is it says there's a difference between magic weapon damage and also magic damage. So magical damage is any damage that you cast with spells, and then magic weapon damage is the magical damage that your weapon deals. It's literally a completely different sort of stat than the magical damage. So you're not actually going to be getting any extra damage casting with this. And obviously I'm going to benefit from the magic power, but I'll literally be casting with a 0 multiplier on my spells. So finally, going over everything, once you've sort of played Wizard as well, you'll get a feeling for how different stats like translate. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this guide helps you, and have a nice day.